Yo, what is up YouTube? And today we're going to be talking about the two new units coming out, one being the new Moonlight unit Abyssal Eup, which you'll see on your screen here shortly, and the new fire unit from episode 5, Kane. Let's talk about Abyssal Eup first. Her animations look amazing and her artwork looks like it as well. And you're going to see her lore is pretty sad. It's basically, I'm not going to talk about it too much, but she kind of got experimented on, so that's kind of why her kit will kind of revolve around like her doing stuff to herself and then becoming stronger. And you can see from her animations here that, you know, it's kind of tragic. Not going to talk about it too much though. Let's actually look at her kit and also her stats. So she's a dark knight, and you're going to see that her defense is very, very high, which can be improved further by her imprint concentration. She also has critical hit chance built into her awakenings, signaling that she probably will do damage, and her attack is pretty decently high for a knight as well. Now keep in mind, she is pretty slow, and she is an Aquarius knight, so this is the first Aquarius knight we have in the game, I believe, so her stat spread is going to be one of a kind until we have another Aquarius knight release. So first off, we actually have her S2. So her S2 is Inner Abyss. Basically, it will reduce the effect of combat readiness increases granted the enemy by 50%. So very similar to Politis' S2, which will make her very good into a mid-cleave. Just any units on the enemy side that really benefit from CR pushes. And also, you're going to see a secondary effect here. When you are attacked, you'll gain 20 fighting spirit and have a 30% chance to counterattack. And at the start of your turn, when your fighting spirit is full, you cleanse all debuffs from yourself. Yeah, like I mentioned, this will make her very good into a mid. She's going to be very good into she's going to be very similar to Politis rather. And something like a Faithless Lidica will get countered pretty hard by her as well. And even like a Meteor Cowrick will not be able to push as often. And obviously AoE attacks will be very good for Abyssal Eup because you'll have a chance to counter with her S1. Next we have her S3, Frenzied Strike. It's going to cost 100 fighting spirits, so you need that fighting spirit to be maxed out before you can actually use it. And basically it's going to inflict trauma on herself. Trauma will decrease her defense by 70%, but increase her attack and speed by 100%. And if defense prior to the effect of trauma is 2000 or higher, so basically if you have her built on 2000 defense or higher, and you're not defense broken, I believe, then the attack and speed you gain will be 200%, which is insane, right? Gab gives you 70% attack, so this is basically a triple Gab, which is actually crazy. And the speed buff will make it so that she's getting 200% speed, so she's going to be lapping like crazy. So this trauma is kind of like a double-edged sword, which is very, very cool. Fits very well with her kit. Basically, she'll be taking a ton more damage. She's basically permanently defense broken, but she's going to be just outputting a ton of damage. And her S3 also has an AoE attack that will strip all buffs, decrease CR by 50%, and ignore effect resist. So this is insane. No soul burn for actually ignoring effect resist. This will just always work on everyone. And after you push back the enemy, you'll be lapping very, very fast with trauma, which makes her super, super strong. So if you actually look at the damage here, you're going to see that it is pretty high, but not as high as you think. Because she's a knight, her damage isn't going to be super high. But this is her animation, looks very, very cool. And you're going to see, yeah, basically this 13k to, I believe that is Arrowell, and then 4k to other units. Next we have our S1, so AoE attack that will have a chance to decrease attack for one turn. This will scale with her defense, and when you're granted trauma, you'll activate Unbridled Outburst, which will be an AoE attack that will actually penetrate defense by 70%. You can soul burn this for extra damage. So pretty strong. I think she's going to be very good, or not very good, but very fun to play around because, yeah, she has kind of like that double-edged sword aspect. And you're going to see with her S1, when you soul burn it, it actually does a decent amount of damage. So, actually, that's the regular S1, so let's actually get the soul burn S1. So this is the soul burn S1, I believe. Yeah, you're going to see it does 17k damage, which is pretty high. So, yeah, this is the regular S1 right there. So, yeah, the Unbridled Outburst is a single target attack, it looks like, so you have to target an enemy. And the Dragon's Breath, when she's not actually granted trauma, is an AoE attack. And the single target attack does a ton of damage. 18k with the soul burn onto an APOC Ravi with Proof of Valor, which is going to be crazy. So yeah, looking at her kit, pretty excited. I don't think she'll be super broken, but her animations, her artwork is crazy. And she looks super fun to play because, yeah, you kind of have that double-edged sword aspect going on. Maybe she will be super broken because her S3 stripping all buffs and pushing back CR is pretty insane. Even if she dies, I feel like this is such a good S3 for your team because your team will be able to take their turn. But I feel like she'll be very easy to kill because of, yeah, just lowering your defense, right? If you are stacking your defense enough where you'll be able to actually get that double stat increase, you're not going to have as much health, and you won't be able to have as much attack and speed, right? It's hard to build attack, speed, health, and defense. You're usually going to have to give up 2 of those stats. So I think she's going to be very, very hard to gear, but definitely think she'll be very, very powerful. She's going to need crit chance and crit damage as well, so she looks very stat hungry. I don't think she'll be that powerful in the meta, but she definitely looks very strong, although I could be wrong, because like I said, this S3 looks amazing. She will be available in the Mystic rotation with Bad Cat Armin, I believe, starting on October 26th. So let me know what you guys think about her so far. I think I'm probably going to pull for her just off her animations and design alone, and hopefully she'll be very strong. And because Abyssal Euphine is from the same timeline with Fallen Cecilia, we can expect ML Luna to come in the future. So if you guys want to save your mystics for that, definitely a good option as well. So now let's talk about the new RGB unit coming out. He's not limited, he's from episode 5, and it is Kane. Kane looks pretty cool. His animations look amazing as well. He is a vampire, as you guys can see. And wow, Smilegate really upped their animation game, especially with Abyssal Euphine and now Kane. Like, you can just see the quality of the animations and the design is just going up every episode, which is a good sign. Maybe they'll release an anime finally. But you can see, yeah, even in the background, in the lobby, like, he looks amazing. Let's actually look at his stats really quick and not really talk about his lore because, yeah, I'm not really too up to date with episode 5, to be honest. But basically, you can see from his stats, he has very, very high attack. So that's probably like the biggest thing that's, noticeable is his very high attack stat. And you can see his imprint concentration will actually improve that further. And he is a Leo warrior. So yeah, keep that in mind. And let's actually look at his skills very quickly. So his S2, Force Awakening, kind of like a Star Wars themed skill name, I guess. But you can see at the start of battle, you'll have 50 fighting spirit. And when you receive lethal damage, similar to Kairon, you'll get Immortality, but also Vampirism, which will give you pretty much self-sustain and lifesteal. And you'll reset the cooldown of Feast of Predation, which is your S3. This can only activate once every 6 turns, I believe, once you max this out. And you're also going to see the secondary effect here. After an ally attacks, if the target is inflicted with bleed, you'll get 10 fighting spirit. And after an ally attacks when fighting spirit is full, you will use all that fighting spirit to become enraged, which will pretty much just give you extra damage, right? And yeah. Next, we can actually see, they are actually showcasing him into Rift, the Rift boss of the season. So kind of good timing because you're going to see from his kit that he's very good into PvE bosses, and the current Rift season is fire. So I think that Smilegate actually released him at this timing for a reason. Now we actually look at his S3. So S3 is a single target attack that will give himself greater attack whiff for 2 turns. This will do extra damage proportional to the number of debuffs on the target, and you can soul burn this for 10 souls to make the cooldown only 2 turns instead of 4. And yeah, like I said, this will give you fighting spirit, so you can actually proc your enrage even quicker and just have extra damage built in. Animation looks pretty sick, and yeah, there's a lot of damage. Really hard to tell how much this will do in PvP because it's doing on a PvE boss. But yeah, it looks like it does a lot of damage here, and yeah, you can see the damage does scale with debuffs on the target, similar to Spectre Tenebria's S3. So in PvE, if you stack a lot of debuffs, it's going to do a ton of damage. Next, we have his S1, Hammer Time, kind of an MC Hammer reference, I think. They're referencing a lot of things with his skill names. But his S1 is a single target attack that inflicts bleeding. And when the caster is enraged, you will ignore effect resist. So you're going to land these bleeds without affecting this anyways. And when it is the caster's turn, you'll activate Rock Smash as an extra attack. Rock Smash is an AoE attack that dispels 1 debuff from Kane. So basically, I think from his kit, he's basically going to be used in PvE. I don't think he's going to be used in PvP that much because debuffs are very hard to utilize in PvP unless they're like stuns or silences because they can get cleansed off. And of course, if you pick a unit like Edward Elric into him, he's just immediately useless. But basically, it looks like you want to pair him with Haste. So they're kind of trying to make a use of Haste because Haste has a ton of bleeds, and you're going to want to run Haste to actually land bleeds. And then if an ally attacks, even if they don't apply the bleed, if the target is inflicted with bleed, you're going to have Kane get that fighting spirit, and then he's going to use his S3 after he's enraged and do a ton of damage because it scales with debuffs. And I do believe if we actually look at the team comp here, yeah, you can see there's Haste here, and then Mercedes and Fire Charlotte. So maybe this is like one of the better comps, but you definitely want to pair him with Haste because he's going to be able to do a ton of damage with Haste's bleed stacking on the boss, and having everyone on your team give him fighting spirit, and then having your S3 to do, that huge amount of damage, kind of like Sigurd's S3 as well. So yeah, I think in PvE, mostly going to be used for, I guess, Earth Expedition, even Golem maybe, and then also, of course, the new Rift season with the Fire Elemental boss. But in PvP, I think it's going to be very hard to use him. He looks like a strictly PvE unit. Now we look at his artifact, Tyrant's Descent. So you're going to see when you're attacking, you increase damage dealt by a flat amount, and an additional 3% on top of that for each debuff inflicted on the enemy up to a cap. So yeah, basically very good on Kane for PvE. I assume for Rift, Daydream Joker won't work. So this will be very good to put on Kane, and then pretty much just any warrior where you're using like a debuff comp, because you only have so many artifacts that will increase your damage, right? You have the new anniversary artifact that gives you 20% damage, I believe, to bosses, but this one will give you even more if you have this maxed out. So yeah, this is going to be very good on him, and I think it's going to be mostly for PvE. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about these units, guys. I'm pretty excited for Abyssal Eup. I think Kane is just like a PvE unit, which is pretty cool. It will make haste more usable, so it's kind of like an indirect haste buff, especially for Rift and like other Earth content. But maybe there'll be some like one-shot comps available now for like Zeo and stuff, and just like other hard bosses with Kane in the game, because his S3 works similar to Sigurd. Maybe we'll see like Sigurd and Kane comps, like you never know. So yeah, because Sigurd also uses bleeds, right? She also applies bleeds, so maybe there'll be more one-shot comps coming out. We'll have to see. But let me know in the comments down below what you're most excited for. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next video.